it was the first time for several of us being, under fire for the first time. Even though you've gone through all your training, there's nothing like learning on the fly. What we would call the internet today, over to military comms to improve the ability to do, the things that you normally would do, from office applications to writing mission orders to internet communications. And so we built everything and tested it at the Joint Testing Interoperability Center. Got an idea for a company, published some books to try to get some notoriety, and I actually ended up with the CEO from OEO saying, hey, we'll invest in your company. Work at companies like Cisco and Oracle, Sun, which isn't really here, they're kind of combined now, and learning a lot about things on the networking side before the internet was really a thing.
Hi, and welcome to Veterans Corner. I'm George Hinestrosa, an Air Force and Army retired veteran of 25 years and a business owner for 8 years. Here on the show, we explore how military experience transforms into business success. Each episode features veterans who've built thriving businesses, sharing strategies that turn military training into entrepreneurial advantage. The mission is to inspire and equip transitioning service members with practical knowledge and real-world insights from veterans who built their businesses in many different industries. And today's guest is Curt Aubley. Welcome to Veterans Corner, Curt.
Hey, good day, George, and thank you for being so kind to have me on your show today.
So today, I'm speaking with Curt Aubley. And if that name doesn't immediately ring a bell, it should. This is someone whose journey began not in Silicon Valley, but in the most demanding proving ground imaginable, the United States Army Signal Corps. As a captain, he served in some of the most challenging assignments you can imagine, from the Information Systems Engineering Command to deploying with the 10th Mountain Division during Operation Restore Hope in Somalia. While most of us were still just hearing about the internet, he was building secure communications infrastructure in active conflict zones. But that military foundation was just the beginning. This is a person who transitioned from military service to become a senior systems engineer at AT&T, then chief architect at NCR, mastering the fundamentals of large-scale secure systems. Founded a cybersecurity MSSP called MightyView in the year 2000 and sold it to Lockheed Martin before most people even understood what cyber threats were. He spent over a decade as VP and CTO of cybersecurity at Lockheed Martin, where he built the next-gen cyber innovation centers that became the blueprint for how America defends itself in cyberspace, managing billions in contracts and creating solutions that protect our most sensitive national security assets. Held senior leadership positions at Intel Data Center Group, Tanium, CrowdStrike, and Deloitte, essentially riding the wave of every major cybersecurity evolution of the past 3 decades. And now, in 2025, he's co-founding Sevi SI because apparently, even after 30 years of being ahead of the curve, he spotted something the rest of us are still missing. So again, Curt, welcome to the show. And there's a lot of history there that you've contributed, not only as a service member, but are still contributing to our country, and I appreciate that very much. But before we get into some of the entrepreneurial thoughts, tell the audience a little bit about maybe what compelled you to get into the military. Well, did you have family members? Did you have icons? What were your thoughts as a young man before entering the service?
Well, first, that was really the nicest introduction I think anybody's ever done. And I think I had to take some notes and send you a basket of goodies, just say thank you for those kind words. Because as a chair, in my mind, I just thought about all the amazing team members, whether they were veterans or not veterans, that I was just really lucky enough to ever get to work with. Some amazing folks and mentors along that journey. So, as a kid, I was a first generation American. My father did spend some time in the National Guard, but I was very interested in being a pilot. And that was my dream, to be a pilot and then become an astronaut. Didn't quite make it there, but it provided a good North Star to, you know, do well in school, and eventually fortunate enough to grab a soccer scholarship and an ROTC scholarship to get work through school in the direction of becoming a pilot. And so that was my vision. And then I was really lucky that my older brother had already started a very successful career in the Coast Guard, Jeff Russell, where he went and did, multiple years as an NCO, then got his degree, went through OCS, got became an officer, retired, and then did a whole other career in communications. And then my brother-in-law did very similar, became an NCO in the Air Force after years there, worked in Special Forces, then became a contractor, then another retirement in the government. So I've been very fortunate to be around some amazing, successful folks and get some mentoring from them along the journey.
Right.
That was my initial goal, but unfortunately, my eyes didn't agree with me, so that wasn't really good for being a pilot. But I was lucky enough to become a signal officer and learn a lot and become an officer there and have some great tours. And I tell you, I love my time in the military, although I didn't want to spend 25 years in the military. I'm very impressed by people who decide to take a long-term career, but then the leadership approaches and how to adapt and overcome. I've really learned it in the military, and it was an amazing journey.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So, um, as you were going through your early service years, so what were some of the challenges you faced as a young man? Like, so you had your aspirations of becoming a pilot, and you end up going into, to the other. We want you to do this, right? Your dream. Here's your dream sheet, and this is what you're actually going to do, right? The space program, and you're going to sweep from here to there. That's your space, right? So what exactly did you find? Did you hit the wall when you said, okay, I can't be a pilot now? I've got to adapt. So what was going through your mind at that point, going through tech school or MOS training?
So I've always loved the technology, but I really did enjoy being an army officer. And I think part of the biggest challenge was just learning leadership, it to be a full spectrum leader and really respect everyone in the military. So as a young officer, I think we all know that there's our NCOs that really run the shop. And that's where you have to quickly learn that that's where you're going to learn. You're going to learn from your senior officers and your peers, but the NCOs that are the backbone of our military is, I think, one of the first challenges just to learn that, wow, that is an amazing set of leadership and experience. And that's where you're going to really learn, I think, especially as a young officer and through your whole military career, that it is teamwork across the board.
Right.
And how can you adapt? And I think that's one of the strengths of, you know, American military is that maybe we don't always follow orders directly.
Right.
To understand the situation, and you may have to adapt, and you're still going to follow the commander's intent, but how you get there might be changing because you're going to work in the team, and no good plan really exists once you hit battle. And learning how to adapt as a military officer is probably one of the hardest things to do, but also one of the greatest things to learn.
Right. So, you were in some of the most, I would consider some of the most hostile environments, being in Somalia, right? And your job specifically, what you were putting up there and developing, and you were ahead of your time. Just talk to us a little bit about those types of challenges, right? Because you were put into here you are wanting to be a pilot, and then you're thrown into the desert, somewhere, and that is so hostile. What was going through your mind at that point, right? How did the camaraderie, how did the teamwork, how did all of that affect you? Just the responsibility, you being the officer, you were probably in charge of the project, right? So what were all the things that may have been going through your mind at that point?
But when I first got assigned to Fort Pachuca, Arizona, my unit had already left that I was supposed to be assigned to for Desert Storm. So I went looking for a job.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I ran into a very kind general as well as a Colonel Terry Fong. I said, "Hey, you got a pretty good background. Went to engineering school. We'll push you over here in the computer engineering center and kind of learn. Junior officers really shouldn't be here. You'll wait till your unit comes back and go work on becoming a platoon leader and the other proper tracks." While there, kind enough, I got to do some civilian training over in Silicon Valley, which I never even knew where it was. Got to work at companies like Cisco and Oracle, Sun, which isn't really here. They're kind of combined now, and learning a lot about things on the networking side before the internet was really a thing. And so, when after Desert Storm, there was a general that came to the Computer Engineering Center and said, "Hey, I would like your communications to be better there." And fortunately, there's just some amazingly smart people I got to work with there. And they said, "Who has that background that could do this?" And they kind of all looked over to me and said, "Hey, we just sent this guy to a bunch of schools. We'll work together as a team. We'll put a unit together." And we built out the, what we call the DDN unit. And that was to bring what we would call the internet today over to military comms to improve the ability to do, the things that you normally would do, from office applications to writing mission orders to internet communications. And so we built everything and tested it at the Joint Testing Interoperability Center and brought in some all volunteers, built out a new unit, got a C5, and was, I'll say, kind enough to send this in rather early, just as we were starting the campaign. Operation Restore Hope had a fantastic first sergeant, he's Mary, who, with the team, we were able to test everything in the U.S., but also start working as a team. And so when we deployed, there wasn't really much in country. So everybody supported everybody else, whether it was working with QRF or setting up defensive positions and really focusing on the mission. So that was just a fantastic experience, until you kind of got to a point where the Somalians weren't overly happy that we're there. People that we helped feed, they loved it. And then there's others, that would wake you up in the middle of the night and you had to move to your defensive positions and such. It was the first time for several of us being, you know, under fire for the first time. And even though you've gone through all your training, there's nothing like learning on the fly. That was quite an experience.
Talk a little bit about that, right? Because a lot of the show is geared towards that type of emotional content. Um, as a young officer and you're doing your job, that's the one side of it, and then you're being thrown into the fire as well. Let's learn as we swim. And throw you in there, so the deep end, so you can swim. Um, what were some of the the fear challenges you may have experienced, right? Because everyone has to go through some sort of impact emotionally, right? What were some of the things that you feel may have really impacted you during that time concerning that particular thing, the atmosphere?
I'm not sure about everybody else, but when you're under fire, it's very scary.
Yeah, very scary.
But you learn to just deal with it. So I think the reality was that having the training builds your working with your team builds confidence. So even though when we got in country and reported to the 10th Mountain Brigade commander there, it was very clear you're a soldier first. And setting up your sector for defense, you've learned how to do it. You have some experienced NCOs with you, and you set your defensive positions up. And while you're setting up for your mission, for mine with communications, intelligence, you execute because you've been taught to be a soldier first. And you set up your defensive and your primary and secondary fighting positions, all those kind of things that you don't really think you're going to have to use.
Right.
But the reality was we had to use them. And because we had spent the time doing that, even though you're laying on the floor of your tent with sandbags around it and, the rounds are hitting the tent, you know what to do. Even though I joked with my first sergeant, we're obviously scared. And we joked around. We used some old Clint Eastwood movies going back and forth. And, we just stay low. You put your body armor on and at the time, a pair of sneakers. And you go in your fighting positions and you coordinate with everybody else and, you engage. You quickly find that maybe half your troops didn't show up where they were supposed to. And it was a quick learning, and we didn't practice enough, even in the country, on what you should be doing when you're under fire. Promptly the next day, he started practicing those things. ensuring your weapons were clean and ready to go, to what do you do in different scenarios. If you're overrun, what if you have to go to a secondary position, what are you going to do when you go out on patrol, making sure you had, even though it was a signal corps, making sure you coordinated with a team that had, crew serve weapons and things of this nature. So I think it was really rapid learning, things you were already taught, but really going back to the basics of leadership and trying to keep the teams motivated. The more you trained, the more comfortable people became, and you're doing that training under fire in an operational area that, in retrospect, maybe didn't have all of the equipment you would really have wanted because we were able to do politics for at that time. Many things we requested um, were not delivered.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. So, Kurt, so tell us. So, as you're getting closer to your time to get out, and you're now you've gone through all of this, and you've experienced these emotions and these, just you've been thrown into the fire. At what point did you say, okay, when did the entrepreneurial side of you, when did you start looking, okay, do I stay in and make this a career? Or do I start, did you have certain mentors? Did you have certain people that you maybe, you consulted with before you got out? What was going through your mind as you were planning, your next steps?
Well, I consulted my wife,
Yeah, obviously.
but the reality is I had applied to become in the Army astronaut program. I got in. Uh, then my eyes unfortunately got worse, so that wasn't going to be happening. Uh, Although I loved my time in the military and I did a little bit of time in the reserves afterwards, if I wasn't able to really kind of follow that dream of becoming a pilot or an astronaut, okay, what's the backup plan? And I was around just a lot of great of mission-focused folks and technology-focused folks, and being lucky enough to be in these advanced military and commercial schools, get to apply a lot of interesting technologies in the field to support the mission. I was like, if I'm going to do technology, I would rather do that and eventually have my own company.
Right.
So I worked with the colonels and other folks that was around me, and they're like, "No, you think the military would be a better thing long term for you?" But they also said, "Hey, take a look at what's out there, and if you can find something you really like, remember, and this is great, great guidance for anybody transitioning out of the military. Prepare before you get out of the military, but also realize whatever job you get or company you may start when you leave the military is a transition job.
Right.
You most high probability you will take another job because going from that military structure and camaraderie, which I think is a huge thing in the military, to this commercial segment, that first job may or may not be perfect. And I think that's one of the things that I learned and do try to share with others is you find the right team to work with in the military, and eventually you move around the different teams, and units you're with is just a better team for you. Right? You help others, they help you. You treat everybody with dignity and respect. And it's the same thing in civilian world. Just because you're at one company, you don't have to stay there for 20 years. I'd move around if it's a large corporation, but if it doesn't allow you to align with where your vision is, where you want to go, then you might move to another team. And another way of looking at this is if you were like I'm a soccer player, but I love watching NFL.
Right.
Those players are amazing, right? They're professional athletes and they have owners of teams. But one day the owner might say, "Hey, number 88, number 12, you're off the team." Or it might say, "Hey, this team, I'm not getting enough playing time. It's just not right." And you move teams. So if you think of your career like you're a professional athlete, you might play for a couple different teams
Right.
along your journey. So for me, I decided to leave the military. I did work for a small company, then a large company with AT&T. Had some fantastic mentors there, Lowell Burgard and others, and that allowed me to accelerate my commercial career, and it really built onto the collaboration, mission focus, leadership, and the technical skills I learned in the military directly translated into civilian life.
Mm, excellent. So, Kurt, and you have so much experience and you've done so many things over the last 3 decades that obviously we wouldn't have time to cover all of that, but I would like to just maybe, and before we get into some of the more personal things that, may affect us, as you said, as a professional athlete, we played for many teams. At what point did you say, okay, this is it. This is what I'm doing now. And this is where all my information, everything I have is leading me to this.
I'm fortunate to have some great successes. I'd have to make sure everybody knows I have lots of epic failures along the journey.
Yeah.
Well, that's feel free to try to learn, right? So you don't make the same epic failures. You adapt, you learn, and you push the edge if you want. I pushed the edge. That's referred to as a kind of like a more of a cowboy style leader, right? Good and bad sometimes. And fortunately, I was able to, through military contacts, have an opportunity to interview for amazing systems integrator here in the Washington, D.C. area called OEO Corporation. And um, a general that I had, yeah, I was a pretty young person. You don't know a lot of generals, right? Uh, but I got to meet General Emmett Page, three-star general, who was a president of this company, and he gave me the opportunity to become his chief technology officer. And we learned all kinds of stuff. We won some massive government contracts to outsource folks like NASA and others. And while there, the CEO is very entrepreneurial. And myself and Arnie Shimo and Dan Matlick and a few others saw a gap in security. And this is early on. So a lot of people didn't really know cybersecurity very much. And so got an idea for a company, published some books to try to get some notoriety. And I actually ended up with the CEO from OEO saying, hey, we'll invest in your company. Curt, you and your team have done amazing things here at OEO. We'll invest in you as your investor. Go start a managed cybersecurity company. And at the time, if you look back now, it doesn't look very cool.
Right.
Self-service, everything, cloud delivered. We didn't have cloud. We had our own data centers, and we were doing intrusion detection and firewall management, and computer performance, a variety of other things. And it really helped me start a new company. We were very successful, worked very closely with OEO. And at that time, the dot-com bubble was kind of happening. We had a bunch of customers. It was going really successfully. So then I was able to meet another wonderful leader here in the DC area, Linda Gooden. She bought a bunch of companies, of which when she bought OEO, MightyView was part of that acquisition. And I didn't think I was going to go back to a big company like AT&T. But you meet these leaders that are just amazing
Right.
charisma. And they're like, hey, we're a little company inside of this massive company called Lockheed Martin. Right. This is going to be amazing. You should come over here and be a CTO over here. And we'd love to do amazing things and grow. And so I thought, maybe I have more to learn, which means I really got a lot to learn. So it was great to have my own company for a year, about 2 years. But then being part of a company like Lockheed Martin and a very entrepreneurial leader, it was like being at a startup company inside of a massive company. And so being able to do that for 10 years, both on classified and unclassified, offense, defensive, cyber, and wide range of R&D, and just be around just super smart people. And there's lots of veterans, shockingly, right? The CEO of Lockheed Martin at that time, after a few years, was Bob Stevens, former Marine officer. Another example of like, wow, you can go to the military, and now he's the CEO of
Right.
just a marvelous, marvelous leader of the largest aerospace and defense company in the world. So I got to spend a lot of time there. And over about a 10-year period, Lockheed started changing. They started saying they didn't want to focus on some of the areas that I really had a passion for, which was cybersecurity and certain technologies. So I've always wanted to live in Silicon Valley. So got a chance to go out and be the CTO for one of Intel Corporation's divisions. And but Intel is still focused on the mission. So we got to still do some classified work and help the mission on that journey. And so from there, I got lucky enough to hang out in Silicon Valley. Got to work with a couple of folks that started a company called CrowdStrike. I go over there as an executive to support the team and help that leadership team go public. It was very successful. Company still is. Mm. And then candidly, I got lucky to have be Deloitte was looking to build out their cyber group for detect and respond. So they wanted to do kind of a startup inside of big Deloitte, which is an amazing company. And I've been having different friends I've got to work with over time. We went to many companies together, and that kind of led me to here. We saw some challenges in the cyber world because adversaries move exceptionally fast. And with the new AI technologies or artificial intelligence technologies, we had an idea. Arnie Shimo, former Navy veteran, 12 years in, just had him on a show, way cooler dude than me. We met two other entrepreneurs, uh, Stephen Collins and Caleb Cross. And the four of us decided to start a company, and we got funding from some venture capitalists in April. And our company is Sevi. I hope to grow that company so we can hire some more veterans. Now we've built out what we think is a very next generation agentic AI company that helps to defend people with or without humans.
Right.
True warriors helping out. There's probably more than you want to know, just kind of couple.
And the invisible enemy, right? The invisible enemy is always lurking, right?
So when you asked me to be on your show, I was like, hey, that's really kind but I know so many people that are way cooler careers than mine. And, but along that whole journey, I've been so lucky to have different mentors along the journey, amazing teams to get to work with. And of course, my family and five daughters along that journey is really the foundation. So, every day I wake up, I'm an extremely happy, high energy person because I feel lucky from those days of being in Somalia and working with the 10th Mountain to the T to Fort Chuka to being able to try to help the world along the journey against those nefarious people that, I want to shut down a hospital or a critical infrastructure, trying to help in little ways that I can.
Right. So, how do you feel that being a veteran, or how do you carry the association of you being a veteran even after so many years, right? And does that when you meet people, is that something that is evident, right? Do you come across? Is that something you use, or is it part of your persona of who you are? I'm a veteran, right? And or is it something that people gravitate to, or they ask you because of your haircut, or sometimes I get
Had long hair in college playing soccer, but once I went to airborne school, that was the end of that. I kind of liked it. It's interesting as we go on our different journeys of life, everything we do is your origin story. I like neuroplastics and stuff like that. Rip us have those origin stories. And I think these origin stories are always part of who you are as you just go over through your journey in life. For me, the military was such a big portion. Like in college, I went to college and I played soccer, but really it was going through and meeting amazing leaders at ROTC that immersed myself, and then being in the military and being fortunate enough to do a combat tour. Was like there for years, and I always think of every other combat area way harder. Nam or Afghanistan. I mean, really tough stuff. And I don't want to downplay my Somalia, but I always think everybody else's stuff was harder. But it does influence you, and I think it does make you think about the big picture of the world and how lucky you are to be able to go into a combat tour with full confidence. We will win. We will get everything done. We will get our team home safe. We'll help the people that our goals are worth helping. And for me, that's always been a big piece of it. And I was lucky enough to work at companies like OEO and Lockheed Martin, Deloitte. They all had a strong veterans program, and being part of cybersecurity, I had 4 security operations centers at Deloitte. That was part of my portfolio, and whenever I had a chance to go to Roslyn or Mechanicsburg, Colorado, and work with a team in Lackrat, India, it's a real mission. And I think you take that thinking from the military. We're not building consumer goods. That's important. We're making up cars. That's probably important too. Like you wake up and the security teams, they're cyber warriors. They're defenders helping businesses with their missions and governments with their missions. And I think it's nice that you can bring the power of that thinking of the military that isn't really hierarchical, right? And that's what people don't sometimes understand. There's the hierarchy, but it's where to work in with your teams and where people rely on, and bringing that forward with that mission focus. Uh, it's something that I do. I strive to bring forward. Now, not everybody is. You do have to read the room forever to do that. So Deloitte, some friends there gave me some good coaching in that area. Some people are a little sensitive about the military. In fact, somebody said, "Oh, Curt, short hair, you're probably in the military." And it was. It says great experience. And they're like, "Yeah, there's so many people in the military." And I said, "Well, I think there's roughly 350 million people in the US, roughly 3, 4 million active military. Now, there's the intelligence community, there's lots more that make that work, right? The people that put themselves in harm's way on purpose, it's less than 1% of our population.
Right. Exactly.
There's not a lot of military around. And so when you run into one and people are so kind nowadays to say, thank you for your service and thank you for their support, you know, it's, it is pretty amazing that with less than 1% of the population of the US,
Right.
supporting the US and freedom around the world, people that they're accepting a whole lot more risk than the average person going to whatever is very important to them.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for yeah, that analogy is great, and just a comparison of the population. And we also have the people that have gotten out of the service, right? And the retirees, the veterans in general, which, again, part of this show is to bring us together, right? A lot of the show is yes, it's about business and success and not what we did in the military, but it's also about uplifting the veteran, right? Because we always hear the homeless veteran or the veteran, the woe is me veteran in the VA. And I think people, I don't think understand totally how much veterans bring to the table and on the wider scale of things, right? You had something to say there.
Yeah, because I think everybody has something to bring to the table. Of course, I'm a little bit on conflict here. I do believe veterans bring something unique to the table, right? And that's either their mission focus, I'll be successful, their ability to collaborate with others, right? And treating everyone with dignity and respect because it's giant teamwork in the military.
Right.
And that's what businesses need. You need teamwork. But you need someone also to sometimes step up and take that initiative and not wait for direction and really finish the project. And when you get a project, there's no doubt that you're going to go finish that project. Sometimes I think some of the commercial world thinks that military is really used to that hierarchy and they don't say it's. You learn full spectrum leadership.
Yeah.
That's leadership for the military.
Like you mentioned, you use the soccer team analogy. And by the way, we have that in common. I still play soccer. Actually, we're starting our adult league on Sunday again for the next 8 weeks. So I still at 60, I still play soccer. So as we wind down, Curt, and let's get into what does Curt do to stay in shape? What does Curt do to center his mind spiritually, emotionally? What paradigm do you have? What habits, what rituals does Curt usually have, right? Daily to keep Curt going, right? Because we're all human, right? And we age. As I said, I'm 60, but I found that these things are so important in my life. Maybe someday someone will interview me, but I'd like to hear, like, how do you stay in shape? How important is it to you? And maybe just a couple of things that you might want to share with people that maybe are general information that you might think is important to a veteran that gets out, that they should continue maybe doing certain things to remain healthy mentally and emotionally, right?
Yeah, everybody has to find the right journey to keep themselves healthy.
Right.
I'm happy to share a few things along my journey. I've always been a competitive athlete, whether it was college soccer or then in the military, going out to play all army soccer or the base soccer teams or coaching. Absolutely loved that. But what was common there, even in the military, is getting into that rhythm of being healthy, physically fit, mentally, culturally, spiritually. For me, I've always been an early riser my entire life. So in the military, it's very easy to wake up for PT.
Yeah.
And so even today, my normal every day is I'm up at 5 a.m. I do a couple hours in the gym. While I'm in the gym, I spend about an hour going through and reading and learning what's happening in the world, what's happening in my industry, what's happening in the technology. Then I spend a fair amount of time with my family. And that's where my foundation is. And so I think that if you can stay physically fit and spend time with your family, then you can get that straight. Then you really can focus with work and your teammates at work, right? But you look at that as a team at work. I'm very lucky to have a fantastic team at Sebi. And so the next piece is constantly learning. Whether it's because we're gone to the internet or mobile devices or cloud computing or the big rush on AI, there's always something new to learn from leadership, collaboration, technology, what's happening socially in the world. So that's a big piece. I put time aside every time to work relationships at work, learn on my own, whether it's getting a new certification from folks down at MIT or just watch the YouTube video and log it into one of our cloud systems, a new AI or something. Get into that rhythm of work out in the morning, puts you in a great state of mind. You feel great. You can conquer anything for the day. Constantly learn some new stuff. And if you have the fortunate enough to spend time with your family and teamwork, team, then I think it puts you in a great direction. And then at the end of the day, one of my mentors, General Page, I would go down to his office. And we're on the same floor. And his office, he's the president, it's a bigger office. I'd sit down and with him and chat, and I would get my General Page words of wisdom, and he would say a little more colorful adjectives than I would use on a show publicly. But he would say, Curt, let's sit down today and figure out what did we screw up today so we don't do it tomorrow. And it was kind of funny. If you did that, I think about the day, and I'm like, all right, what do we do? What went wrong so we can fix it? If you can find a way of doing this and still having fun, I think you'll enjoy your journey a whole lot more.
Right. So as we close out, Curt, then just, if you had a room full of transitioning service members right now, and you had, 2 minutes to share something from the heart, just the most heartfelt thing that you might want to say to our veterans out there or transitioning service members, what would that be? Just something that you as a leader have learned, hindsight, anything that you think is pertinent to helping a veteran's state of mind and emotions.
I think it starts with you made it through the military, so you should be proud of what you did and have that as a confidence foundation. So no one can take that away from you. You should be very confident and very proud of what you've done in the military. With that, take the initiative. Don't be shy. There are so many people that want to help, right? I try to mentor and help as many people as I can. It's still not enough that I think I can help. And a lot of times people will ask me, like, how did you get this? Or how did you get here? And that's all by asking for help and finding others that will help you. And being a veteran, typically people want to help.
Right.
So asking for help. And then I think the third one really big is don't quit.
Yeah.
Just like you learned in the military, never quit, never die. We'll go into situations where maybe they're not for nice to veterans, or you go to a team and it's just not for you. That's okay. Learn from it and don't quit and just go to that next one. Take that initiative, ask for some help. And I think if you kind of think about that a little bit, be proud, take that initiative, never quit, and keep a positive energy attitude, over time, it will work out.
Yeah. Yeah. It will work out. Well, thank you so much, Curt. I appreciate your time. Again, if people want to reach out to you, we will put that on the video description and the links, all your handles. But thank you again for being with us. And God bless you. Thank you again for your service as well and your ongoing support to our nation. Thank you, Curt, very much.
Well, thank you, George, for having me in, and thank you for your double service. Going from Army and Air Force is like extra impressive. So thank you for having me on the show, and anything we can do to help our veterans is always a wonderful thing to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.